More and more people are investing in virtual currencies like Bitcoin and Ethereum. As these virtual currencies become more and more popular, questions arise about how the tax rules may affect our management. I'm here today with Amy Wang from the AICPA, who's going to share what the AICPA, some recommendations that we recently made to the IRS about how people can manage virtual currencies.
Thank you for having me, Colette.
Thanks for being here today, Amy.
Of course.
So first things first, when we talk about virtual currencies, how many people in the population does this really affect? Who's really investing in virtual currencies?
So I've heard statistics that say that 1 in 10 people now have some kind of virtual currency investment, whether they dabble in it or they do it regularly. So it's really affecting a lot of people.
Wow. And when we talk about virtual currencies, can you just explain to our audience, what does that mean exactly?
That's a great question, and for people in the audience that think that's a silly question, like what's virtual currency, I would say it's not silly at all. Most people don't know what it is, and we've had to learn a lot about it just to come up with our comment letter. Well, virtual currency is like currency in that you can use it to buy and sell, and that it is used as a store of value. But unlike currency, it is not backed by a sovereign government. Another term for it is cryptocurrency, and that term it's the same thing. Good to use. And both the terms virtual currency and cryptocurrency are good words because it defines the intangible nature of the asset, and also it defines the secure technology that is used to make this asset effective.
Thank you, that was a good explanation. So why did we submit a recommendation to the IRS regarding virtual currencies?
So back in 2014, the IRS released a notice, and it was notice 2014-21, and it provided the preliminary guidance on how to treat virtual currency for U.S. tax purposes. And one of the interesting things it said was that virtual currencies that can be exchanged for cash would be treated as property for U.S. tax purposes. So what that means is, say you buy virtual currency X for $10, and then 15 months later you use it to buy $50 worth of clothing. How you would report that, according to the IRS, is you would report $40 worth of long-term capital gain. And that's just a very unique way to do this, because in some foreign countries, virtual currency is treated as a foreign currency. So the treatment is really different from country to country.
It's a complex issue.
Yeah, and so we really need more guidance, especially now there are 1,600 different types of virtual currency, and CPAs need the guidance, more guidance in order to comply with the rules.
Wow. So we put together a letter with some recommendations to the IRS a few weeks ago. Can you share with our members what some of the guidance was in that letter?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're CPAs, so we love technical things, getting into the weeds and all the details. So we came up with 27 FAQs, and not only that, but we came up with both the questions and our recommended answers to the IRS for these questions. So we really tried to do as much of the work as possible for the IRS so that they could issue the guidance as soon as possible. And two of the major things I think that are popular questions that we heard from members, and also why we included in our letter, is one, can IRAs invest in virtual currencies? And our answer is yes. Another popular question that we included was, do taxpayers have to report virtual currencies that are exchanged that are held in exchanges with jurisdictions operating outside of the U.S., so in foreign countries? And if they meet the FATCA and FBAR requirements, do they have to report that virtual currency? And the answer is yes, because the jurisdiction is outside the U.S., so it's not treated as property outside of the U.S.
So you said before 1 in 10 members of the population invest in virtual currencies. So why is it important for CPAs to be involved in this space?
It is important because, as we know from this past year after tax reform, CPAs are the advisors. We're the go-to people for our clients. We're their therapists. They've been coming to us week after week. How do we invest our money? Where do we put our hard-earned savings? And so it's important for CPAs to be on top of these new emerging areas like virtual currency so that we can advise our clients to the best of our ability.
Do you have any advice for our members who may be dealing with some of these tax questions related to virtual currencies?
Absolutely. So I think I have 3 pieces of advice. One is adhere as best you can to the current guidance that is offered by the IRS in their notices. 2, be conservative with your calculations and how you account for gains and losses in virtual currency transactions. And 3, apply a reasonable manner and apply it consistently. And we advise that for all areas, especially with tax reform when the rules right now are a little bit uncertain, just be consistent and be reasonable.
Okay. So if our members want to learn a little bit more about the letter that we sent to the IRS, some of our recommendations, some of our resources, where should they go?
They should go to the AICPA Tax Advocacy webpage, and that has all of our tax advocacy and policy team letters and updates and any new news that we develop. Also a great thing to do is to subscribe to the IRS e-alerts, and that's what I do, and you get notices and alerts come to your email right away when they release something.
Okay, we'll make sure that we put the links to all of those resources that Amy mentioned right in the comments of this Facebook Live. One more question for you, Amy. When do you expect to hear back from the IRS on our recommendations?
I wish I knew the answer to that question. I think that all of us want IRS to really focus on tax reform guidance right now, and that's probably where their attention is. But I'm sure that once tax reform guidance is out, they will be able to address some of these other issues that we're really concerned about.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much for joining us today. I know I learned a lot about how we're managing some of the tax rules as it relates to virtual currencies. So thanks for joining, and we'll see you at the next Go Beyond Disruption Facebook Live.